Hello, hello. Bonjour tout le monde. Thanks for joining us today. Hi, just some reminders, some technical considerations as people keep joining in. So, well, first of all, we'll got you covered. So you will be receiving a full recording of the call, the slides, and a collection of links and resources. So don't worry about that. Also, for technical support, just a reminder that you can use the chat panel to ask for technical support throughout the conversation, and you can also raise your hand through the raise hand function if you have any questions. And just remember to stay on mute if you're not speaking, please. It's one-on-one already, so let's just get started. So I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Laura, who's going to start us today.
Thank you. Welcome. Bienvenue tout le monde. It's great to see you all here, and I see people are still pouring in. We'll continue admitting people from the waiting room. But yeah, thanks for being on mute as well when you're not speaking. And we will get to a Q&A portion in a bit, but just I wanted to start with some introductions. So my name is Laura Schnur. I am the director of the Community Climate Transitions Initiative here at Tamarack. And I'm joined today by two colleagues. So Jorge Garza, who is manager of cities on my team, and also Trisha Islam, who is a manager of cities with another vibrant community network at Tamarack called Communities Building Youth Futures. And Trisha is here to interview me and Jorge, ask us a few questions to make this a bit more lively. So what we'll be doing is sharing a brief presentation on the Climate Transitions Cohort opportunity. We'll be doing a bit of a Q&A with Trisha, and then we'll go into audience Q&A. So that's our plan for today. So before we get going, we want to acknowledge the land we're meeting on today. I myself am calling in from the unceded territory of the Ganenkahaga Mohawk people. It's known as Jojage, or colonially known as Montreal. And I would welcome you all to take a moment to reflect on the land you're calling in from, and think about the generations of Indigenous people who have taken care of this land that we are all on. And it's also important to recognize the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous people, and really connect that to the collective commitment to make the promise and challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. So with that, I would invite everyone on this call to introduce yourselves briefly in the chat box. If you can share your name, organization, or affiliation, and where you're calling in from, that would be great. It'd be nice to get to know one another. And please do feel free to acknowledge the traditional lands you are on today. So just take a minute and do that. Feel free to do that in French or English. Thank you, Lesha, Trisha, for getting us going. Welcome, Andy, Summer, Allison. So I see people, we have people from so far, from Quebec, BC, Ontario, Ohio, okay. Ohio State, great. Winnipeg, we're really, Alberta. We've got a lot of different communities, different provinces joining today, and it seems even some international folks. So thank you. And if you haven't had a chance to do so, please, you can do that in the next couple minutes. So we will now do a short presentation on the Community Climate Transitions Cohort opportunity. I will pass it over back to my colleague Jorge to share a bit about this.
Thank you so much, Laura. And yeah, we're super excited to be here with all of you, and to be able to share more about this opportunity that we recently launched at Community Climate Transitions, the Climate Transitions Cohort. So the cohort is a 10-month learning journey, and it's designed for communities to develop and implement community plans to drive a just and equitable climate transition. So we're hoping to bring together a group of trailblazing communities from across Canada that will join us on this exciting learning process, in which we'll develop a common vision and a common agenda through a collective impact approach. And sometimes the question that we get asked is, okay, so what do you mean by collective impact? So by collective impact, we're looking at a commitment of a group of actors from across society towards a common vision and towards a common agenda for solving a specific challenge using a structured way of working together. So what is it that we're offering at the Climate Transitions Cohort? So we're looking at monthly cohort sessions with guest speakers on a range of topics, some of them on climate and others on poverty, but we're really looking at bringing these two areas and the intersection of them. We're also looking at coaching sessions with our coaches from the Tamarack Learning Center, as well as one-on-one support from the Community Climate Transitions team, and access to resources, of course, to help you develop those plans through collective impact and community engagement. And lastly, last but not least, we're offering updates on the latest news, events, and publications on community climate transition. As to who is eligible to participate, well, the cohort is open to communities across Canada that are looking to develop these plans, these transition plans, and meet the following criteria. So we're looking at a commitment on centering equity, justice, and inclusion, and in their response to the climate challenges. We're also looking at a commitment to collective impact and community engagement, and last but not least, it's really important to look at diversity in the team. So although we are not being very prescriptive on this, it would be great to have a cross-sector team. And even within a community that there are two people coming from that same community working together in that team, that would be great. As for the objectives, this cohort is designed to be adaptive, community-led, and participatory. By adaptive, we mean that the process is flexible, yet it provides us a structure for us to work together and to advance together. By community-led, we're looking at communities as the ones leading or co-leading the process in partnerships with other local stakeholders. And lastly, by participatory, we're looking at communities playing an active role in learning, engaging, and building together what would be a sense of belonging and a shared purpose. So I'm going to pass it to Laura for the next sections on the cohort.
Yeah, and I would just remind people, if you're able to put yourself on mute when you're not speaking, that would be great, because I'm hearing a little bit of background noise. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Laura.
So 2 levels of objectives here. So there's the local objectives, where we're really hoping to support meaningful change within communities and hoping to support that collective impact work that enables communities to work towards a common agenda and a common vision for the type of change they want to see, and a just and equitable and inclusive climate transition locally, and really move that forward. And that means developing new forms of relationships and collaborating and forming a collective and doing deep and meaningful engagement with community members, especially those most affected by these issues. So there's that piece, and there's the national level objectives around really building a platform and providing the connective tissue for these communities to learn from one another and work with one another and inspire one another, and also amplify new narratives and voices we don't always hear from, and really help share those stories with others across the country. So that's a bit about the objectives. The content, we're looking at really supporting communities in two ways. So supporting their learning journey in terms of the how and the what of developing a climate plan. So in terms of the what, the content of a plan, it depends a bit, right? If communities are looking more at adaptation or mitigation, but some elements include working on doing a GHG emissions inventory and setting targets and developing promising actions and approaches, solutions to really include in that plan. But then there's also the process piece, right? And that's a strong focus for us. So the work of how to do community engagement and how to go about establishing collaborative governance and collective impact. And so we'll go through the fundamentals of all those and really support communities to understand how to create a climate plan that is a whole community approach. And so it's really a combination of those two. And you can see here the 4 phases that we'll work through and some of the key content being covered. In terms of the timeline, we are right now in the phase of accepting applications, and we'll be accepting them until December 13th. So we invite communities to apply. Following that, we'll be evaluating the proposals and hope to get back to communities as quick as possible. And then the cohort itself will be launched in February and will run from February to November of next year. And next steps, that's it. The application process is very short. You may have already seen it on our website. It's just a few questions to get to know people a bit better. And that's, again, open until December 13th. So we're hosting today's session to answer questions people have, but we're also available if you want to follow up with either Jorge or myself by email. We'd be happy to get back to you with responses. So we'll be including our email addresses at the end of the presentation and in the chat. So that's it for the quick presentation. We are now going to pass it over to our colleague Trisha, who's going to jump into the 15 questions in 15 minutes. So Trisha, over to you. Keen to hear what questions you have for us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that presentation, Jorge and Laura. So as Laura was mentioning, I'm calling in from the Communities Building Youth Futures team, and I support 13 communities. We'll be inviting a couple more over the next couple of months. So I completely understand where you're coming from. And I'm so excited to be asking some questions to the team, some thoughtful questions that we're hoping we'll be answering, ones that you have in mind today. So we'll jump right into it. The first couple of questions are for Laura, and they're around objectives and goals. So Laura, could you tell us a little bit more about what's the goal of the Climate Transitions Cohort, and what are we hoping to achieve in the 10-month process?
Yeah, so we're really hoping to support and accelerate the great work that's already happening in communities when it comes to taking action on climate change, and support participants in taking a whole community approach that engages organizations from across sectors, as well as local residents, and particularly those who are most affected by the impacts of climate change. And we recognize that participants will be at different stages of the work and on different timelines. So we're not expecting that within the 10 months, every community has developed a local plan and is implementing that plan. That would be unrealistic, but some participants may actually already have a plan and they're just looking at implementing that through collective impact. But we basically hope to provide the tools and the resources to help communities work towards this as an end goal, regardless of what stage they're at.
Great, thank you. So could you tell me a little bit more as a participant, why should I join this cohort?
Yeah, I think the real value add for participants is access to knowledge and resources around, again, the how and the what of developing a plan. And so there's that element, but there's also peer learning and exchange, and that's really key. The opportunity to get to know others and work with others who are going through similar challenges and learn from them and share good and best practices, and also the support and coaching they'll get through the process. So the idea is really, in terms of how I would sell it to communities, we're hoping to help them make the work of developing a plan a little less daunting.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Let's dive a little bit deeper into that content and support piece. We're going to ask a couple questions to Jorge, who will tell us about what we are offering. So Jorge, could you tell us what the content of the cohort looks like?
For sure. Thanks for the question, Trisha. So when we were looking at the learning journey of the cohort, we're basically looking at a structure that is very emergent and allows for emergence and experimentation. So the phases, the mindsets, and the content that we're hoping to cover is designed in a way that acknowledges the unique elements of each community and their unique contexts. And we're working right now in developing the specific themes around climate and poverty and community engagement that will connect with this work. And we'll be offering more information on that in the early next year, as well as some of the coaching opportunities that will be related to that.
That's helpful. So could you tell us a little bit more about the themes that you mentioned? So is this cohort focused on community exploring mitigation or adaptation work?
Right. Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, thank you, Trisha. So we're looking at both areas and anything in between, while at the same time we're conscious of the needs that communities might bring to us. And for instance, one of them that we've been listening to a lot is the mitigation. So we'll be prioritizing based on the needs that communities share with us. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So now that we have a sense of the content and what we're hoping to work on together, let's pass it back over to Laura. Laura, so how is this different from other programs that are helping communities to develop climate plans? So one that's top of mind is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection. So how is this different?
Right. There are a lot of other programs out there, it's true, that are supporting in developing climate plans. And PCP is a really key one. And we've had this question, and actually a couple of applicants who have submitted their proposals, their applications so far are part of the PCP program. I think there's two things. So one, the target audience. For many of the other initiatives out there and programs, they're focused on municipalities. And ours is both municipalities and community change makers who are outside of government. So that's key. The other is around the focus on process. So not only supporting communities to understand what goes into a climate plan, but really the collective impact process itself that I spoke about earlier.
Excellent. So I know that the team is working on a really exciting and new area of work for Tamarack. So can you tell us why Tamarack is engaging in the climate space to begin with?
Yeah, we have over 20 years of experience working with community change makers to really develop capacity around collective impact, community engagement, collaborative governance, innovation, and evaluation, and particularly applying those interrelated practices in this space of poverty reduction and deepening community, and most recently, building youth futures with your work. So given the urgency of the climate crisis and the fact that we are in the decade of action for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, it feels like a great moment to adapt that collective impact model and see how we can apply it to support a just and equitable climate transition.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Let's flip it back over to Jorge to talk about the practicalities of being part of this network. So Jorge, is there a cost to participating?
There is no cost to participate, but we're hoping that at the end of this process, participating communities will help us by providing input in the next iteration of the Climate Transitions Cohort. And also moving forward, we would be looking at participating communities that will be also Tamarack members.
Okay, that's good to know. So to clarify, do participants get funding through this, or do they get support to find funding for their climate and collective impact work?
They don't get funding through this cohort. However, we offer access to coaching, both from the Tamarack's Learning Center and also from our Climate Transitions team. And yeah, we'll also be developing the content of this coaching specifically as it will connect with the curricula. Yeah.
Great, thank you. That was really helpful. So let's chat a little bit about who this is for. Could you tell us who's eligible to participate in this cohort?
Yes, so at this time, we are offering the opportunity just for Canadian communities. And I did see a question in the chat from our participant in the US, so I wanted to mention that. So at this stage, it is for Canadian communities, but a lot of the resources we'll be producing, we'll hope to kind of through it create like potentially a podcast series and a list of resources and things. So I would invite you, Lesha, to stay in touch, and I hope there's ways that we can take some of the learnings and what comes out of this and some of the materials that we're preparing as well and share them with you. So I do apologize, yeah, but I wanted to mention that. And otherwise, for that question, it's in terms of eligibility, like as we said in the presentation, we're really just looking at groups of 2 people from each community, ideally. That just helps with continuity if anyone should move on during the process. We're looking at a commitment to approaching climate through a collective impact lens, commitment to equity and justice, and as we said, that cross-sector teams piece is really an asset. And then those who are either looking to develop a plan, not necessarily within the timeframe of the cohort, but on their own timeframe, and or those who have a plan and are looking to implement the plan through collective impact.
Great. And I'm sure participants are thinking about how you are selecting communities. So can you tell us the selection process and how you'll be selecting participants to be part of the cohort?
Mm-hmm. So we're looking to form a diverse group. So we're thinking diversity in a number of senses, including where people are coming from in terms of geographically. And I see already from the participants on this call, we really have coast to coast. We're looking at size of community and stage of development, and whether they're starting out, developing a plan, looking to implement, and other characteristics around the communities themselves. And we are hoping to accept as many as we can. We have to see how many applicants we get and how much the resources we have available, but we do really hope for this to be open and available to as many people who want to participate as we can.
Great. Let's dive into the ideal team structure. So Jorge, could you tell us what an ideal team would look like? What happens if I still don't have a team? And then what happens if my team has a different composition?
Sure, thanks, Trisha. So the ideal team, we want it to be diverse in the sense that we have different sectors working together. Again, we're not going to be very prescriptive on this, but it would be ideal. We also want 2 people from the same community, at least 2 people being part of the team. So whether it's a community organization or a municipality, but we want a couple there so that both of them can support each other. If that looks different in your case, that's fine. We can discuss the difference between teams on a one-on-one basis and see how we can collaborate and what we can do to help on our end. Another thing is that if your team changes, let's say you have the idea that you want to work with 4 people right now, but all of a sudden it's just going to be 2 or 3 people in January. So that's fine. We can always discuss it and see how we can work together around that. And lastly, if you don't have a team yet, don't panic. You can always keep working on that, submit your application, and then we'll touch base in January and see what we can do on our end to help you.
Great. I think that's quite reassuring to know. The next question I have for you is this cohort designed for small, mid, or large size communities?
Right. We're not looking at specific sizes of communities to give a preference to, if I could say it that way. But we definitely want to make sure that if there's a group of small communities working together, if there's a group of small communities being part of this cohort, that they can work together, support each other. Same with mid-sized communities and big cities as well. And if I may say, Tamarack has had experience over the past couple of years working with all sorts of communities, whether it's a small, mid, or big size cities. So our experience with these networks has shown us that it's good to have this diversity. And yeah, and we'll make sure to have the platform there to support you, regardless of your size.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Laura, let's talk a little bit about capacity or what the ask is from participants. What is the time commitment that's involved?
Mm-hmm. So we'll have the monthly sessions, which are 1.5-hour sessions, workshops where we'll have external guest speakers coming in and sharing, and we'll have opportunities to do breakout rooms in those as well to ensure we have the peer learning. In addition to those, there will be occasional check-ins with Jorge and myself with the team, just to see how people are doing on their learning journey, how we can adapt and better meet people's needs, and also pair people with coaching to have that additional coaching support. And then there's the coaching sessions themselves. So each community has up to 6 coaching sessions to work through areas where they could use extra support. And there'll be some homework in between sessions as well for people.
Great, that's helpful to know as well. So in addition to the workshops and accessing coaching, what else will be expected from participants?
Mm-hmm. So in terms of homework, because people may have been like, oh, what homework are you doing? There's going to be resources and readings that we'll be sharing for each of the 10 months. And so those would invite people to look at between sessions to really kind of come prepared with good questions. And so that's sort of one of the key elements. And another is there'll be some homework assignments between sessions as well and before coaching. So for example, if we're having a conversation on how to do community engagement and a community is interested in doing additional coaching on that with our expert coach, Lisa, we might assign a homework assignment of doing community engagement planning canvas and really planning out some of the things around the objectives and the levels of engagement and so on, and doing some of that thinking. So that's it. But most importantly is actually the work happening in communities that's been going on throughout the process, right? And we do hope that's work that participants are looking to do or already doing anyway. And so we don't really count that as like work related to this cohort.
Great, thank you. And the last question, 15 out of 15, is for Jorge. So Jorge, knowing that we have a couple of participants from Quebec, is the cohort taking place bilingually?
Great question, Trisha. So the monthly sessions, they will take place in English. However, depending on whether we have Francophone participants or bilingual participants joining us, we might end up having breakout groups, which usually take place at the last, let's say, 30 minutes of our sessions, or for 90-minute sessions. They could take place in French, some of them, and also at the CCT team, we're able to provide that support in French. We could also have the one-on-one support and coaching available in French from the Learning Center, but also from our team. And lastly, all the publications that we're doing within CCT, they're in English and French. So that's some of the support that we can offer in both languages. Yeah.
Excellent. Great. So those are the 15 questions I have to ask of you. I just want to thank you both for allowing me to be here and for the excellent questions that you drafted. Good luck.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Trisha. Thanks for being here with us today.
Yes, thank you.
So we hope that answered some of your questions and maybe sparked some additional ones. So now we would open it up for conversation and take any specific questions you have. Feel free to either put yourself off mute and maybe put your camera on, and you can introduce yourself to everyone and share a question, or you can put it in the chat box as well if you feel more comfortable doing that. And raising the hand function might help. So thank you, Samantha, for getting us going. Go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Samantha Tremalam, and I'm from Waterloo Region area. So I work with an organization called Climate Action Waterloo Region, and we work with the 8 municipalities here, and we bring all 8 together to do our community level climate action planning and implementation. My question is around the team size. So Laura, I heard you mention that teams of 2 are ideal, but then Jorge mentioned at least teams of 2. So we have quite a large group that works together. So I'm just looking for clarity on, is that a max of 2 or is it?
I meant to say minimum 2.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's not exactly a max. And you're absolutely right. In your case with Climate Action Waterloo, you're actually quite advanced in this work because you've already formed a collaborative kind of collective with representatives from across sectors, right? And that's really exciting. And I think that's the goal and what a lot of communities are wanting to work towards. So given you're already at that stage, like the more participants you have, in a sense, the better, right? Because you're moving through this as a collective. So absolutely, I don't think there's a max from our perspective.
Okay, great, thank you.
I think I saw someone else's hand up before. Marianne.
Marianne, yeah.
Hi, I'm Marianne Turney-One. I'm in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. And I was just wondering, I mean, I have a few different hats. I work at the university here at the Coady Institute, and there's some interest from like on a work side, but on my kind of community member side, there are several people here. We have no formalized group, but there have been a couple different people interested in this. And so I said I would sit in on this. So that was kind of maybe on the other end from the previous question is, if we have kind of a group of people who are not quite sure, but we can get two to commit, but then maybe others, like we bring information back, is that okay? Or are you looking for a little more formalized team? And I know there are a few people here who were approached by Tamarack to say that, like, are you interested in joining? And they, I guess, so it's more like, will you connect people if we're from the same community, but you're approached, like, let's say you get 2 applications or 3 applications from Antigonish because people didn't connect, like, would you connect us to form a team? So just kind of around some of that. That
right.
help.
Yeah, yes, we would for sure. And yes, we were in touch with others. Actually, our colleague Natasha from the Communities Ending Poverty Network has members in Antigonish and had connected us with them because they were really interested in the climate work. So we would absolutely do that. And I think in terms of your other question, like, would that be okay to have a couple of people and others who are maybe interested in joining? I think that's yes, for sure. That sounds like probably what we would anticipate from a lot of communities where they have some really tight, strong relationships, and then some others that are looser, but they're looking to strengthen, right, in terms of as they work towards that collective model. So for sure.
Perfect, thank you.
Anything to add, Jorge?
No, that's good for now. I just wanted to flag that we have 2 questions also in the chat, and I'm conscious that Gail, you also have a question. So maybe I'm just gonna go quickly through the 2 questions that I saw already in the chat box. I think it's gonna be faster. Apologies for my typing. Matt, yes, communities. Yes, we are looking at neighborhoods too, and I don't think we've been very prescriptive either on looking at okay, just one neighborhood in one city. It really depends on how you organically come together as a community, whether it's 2 neighborhoods in the same city or 1 neighborhood in the same city. We're really leading up to communities who know best how to organize themselves on that end. So no worries around that. And Rita, thank you for your question on the kind of coaching that is open for municipal governments. Definitely, this is something just the same as the more climate technical side in terms of the needs that might arise. This is something that we're considering in the design of the cohort, but also in the responses that we get through the survey. So through the cohort applications. So based on the responses and the needs that participants are showing, we're going to be tailoring our curriculum in collaboration with other partners, not only from Tamarack, but from our emerging network. And just to say, I'm an urban planner, so I'm also happy to help and discuss that in any way I can. And yeah, I hope that's helpful. And I guess we can go to Laura. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, that's great. On the neighborhoods question, I just wanted to say we've had applicants from neighborhoods in Montreal and Toronto already, so specific neighborhoods, and for sure, especially in bigger cities, like I think that's really relevant. And that last question, Matt's question, could there be multiple cohorts in one city? I think that was as we were speaking about Antigonish and the idea of connecting people. I think that's also fine if there's multiple cohorts, and we would just probably introduce people to say, hey, in case you don't know, there's this other community, this other group within your community who's looking to participate in case there's interest in collaborating. So we would make an introduction, but not opposed to having more than one cohort in the city. So now I'm Gail.
Hi, thank you very much for having this program. I think it's just a great idea to unite the country as well as communities. And I'm currently working in Port Alberni in British Columbia with the Alberni Climate Action Team. And currently we meet on a bi-monthly basis with the city engineer, and he's our liaison with the city. So I wondered we're currently working on the official community plan, and I wondered how you might fit this program in with our work. Would you be able to attend one meeting per month, for example, with the city and with our group? Or how would you see yourselves fitting into that kind of scenario?
Right. So I think it would be more that we would have some regular check-ins with the participants, like whether it would be great if the city themselves, if this contact you have would be interested in participating. If not, I think that whoever the participants would be then from your group, we would be working with you to support you in accelerating that kind of collective impact work you're doing on the ground and achieving the goals that you've set for yourself locally. So I don't think we'll have the capacity. I would love to join those meetings because that sounds really neat. But I'm just conscious that with all the communities that we're going to be supporting through the cohort, that we won't have that capacity to be joining all of them on the ground. Maybe once in a while we can explore, but probably not regularly with all participants. So it would be more working with you directly with the participants from your community to help move that process along. And so hearing how those meetings are going, taking things back, and reflecting on what supports you might need.
Thank you.
Linda.
First of all, thank you for having the session and the opportunity. Just a quick question regarding, we talked about, or you answered questions around having multiple cohorts in one community or city. What about the opposite in terms of being able to work on a regional level? So in my work, I represent 4 smaller communities in Northeast Alberta. And because I already work collectively within those 4 communities and with stakeholders, would a cohort be made up of, could we make a cohort up of a complete region?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've spoken with a couple of communities that are working at the regional level, and I think the Waterloo region is actually a great example. So Samantha, who chimed in before, and our colleagues from Halton who are on the call, Halton Environmental Network is a similar example where they're really working at the regional level. So we are seeing examples of that, and we're keen to support that as well, for sure.
Perfect, thank you.
And if I may add, maybe this is a good time based on this question to share about the webinar that we're organizing on December 15 with our colleagues from Halton, and we're looking at their case as a community climate response to collective action. It's really, really interesting. So I'm going to share the link shortly.
Mm-hmm. Allison, over to you.
Hi, Allison calling in from Chelsea, Quebec. I'm with ACRE, a local nonprofit environmental group. And I was wondering if you could say a few things about the sort of equity and justice lens that you're bringing to this. When I was having conversations with others, I wanted to fill that out a little bit and understand better what you mean by a equitable and just community climate transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for the question. So as we mentioned, and some of you are probably familiar with Tamarack's work and others maybe less so, but this is an area we've been working in since inception in the last 20 years. So we're most known for our work in poverty reduction and tackling inequality and ensuring equity. And both in terms of the themes, like the poverty reduction work we've been doing over the last 20 years through Communities Ending Poverty, but also the practices, right? So the practice of doing deep community engagement is something we really kind of specialize in and have deep expertise around. And a key piece, especially in the poverty work we've been doing, has been really doing engagement with people with lived and living experience for them to co-create a community plan when it comes to addressing poverty. And that's something that that we've just had a lot of success in and been supporting a lot of communities with. And so we're hoping to use that and support participants in this cohort to do some of that deep engagement work with diverse groups and individuals in their community and those who are most affected by these challenges. And so that's really a key piece for us and a key piece of building a whole community approach, sort of like a bottom-up kind of plan. But Jorge, would you like to add to this a bit?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for this question, Allison. Yeah. I would say that also when we're looking at just and equitable transitions, we're linking this also to the Sustainable Development Goals in the sense that it's about leaving no one behind. And when we say no one, we're looking at communities that are having different income levels, the different ethnic groups, different age groups. How are we creating spaces for communities to feel safe so that they can come together, so that we can work together and really bring the best of one another. And just to be very specific on what I mean by that, we've been developing over the past couple of weeks around justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion approach within our climate transitions work. And we're also hoping that this will permeate as we design the cohort. And going back to the learning journey, sorry if that might sound repetitive, but the intention for us to have those faces, those mindsets, and those key objectives is in the spirit of creating a learning space where everyone can feel included. And this is the lens that we're bringing. Yeah, and that's why and going back to the question on the specific support to municipalities, and when I mentioned about the technical side of climate. What we're bringing here is also the strength of Tamarack over the past 20 years in engaging with communities in meaningful ways, because to us, the transition, just and equitable transitions are happening at the community level. We need to be able to work together and to collaborate so that we can create the change that we want to see. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, yeah, and I just add maybe too that like we're looking at embedding justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion lens through the entire process of the curriculum, right? So I think we can apply that lens at every stage of developing a climate plan. So whether we're doing the GHG emissions inventory or setting our targets and looking at solutions, like we need to look at everything and really consider it at every step along the way. And so it's not just like an element, it's not just like, let's cover this issue in week 2 of the session or month 2, but like, how do we apply that lens throughout and always think through our questions and our work with that lens. So we really want it to be fully embedded. And I think there's been just a shift in the climate movement in the last couple of years where we're just moving from like climate action to climate justice. And there's a real understanding around the importance of this. And it can be hard to make sense of everything out there, like all the resources and all of the tools and approaches. And so we want to kind of do some of the curating work as well to really bring what's maybe most useful to communities and participants in their journey.
Mm-hmm. And just to your point, Laura, that's really interesting when you mentioned that, yes, it's difficult to make sense of everything that's going on. This is why also as part of the cohort, we mentioned that one of the things that we're offering are all these resources to support participants in their learning journey. And within community climate transitions, we develop case studies, articles, and blog posts, hoping that they will inspire you and the communities in your own journey, and hoping that's gonna also help you make sense on what we mean sometimes when we use the wording transitions, justice, equity, and so on.
Are there any other questions? Anything coming up for people as you listen and reflect on all of this? I'll give people another couple minutes, but one question that you might have that I'm realizing we didn't share is like what happens after the 10 months, right? Like, are we just going to say goodbye and have a nice journey? So I wanted to kind of mention that this is, like we said, it kind of has a start and end date, but we hope it's the beginning of an ongoing journey with people. So our work, Community Climate Transitions Initiative, is going to be continuing and living on, and it'll be really interesting to see how far our communities get during that 10-month process. But at the same time, you know, it's only 10 months. So while we hope to help accelerate the work happening on the ground, we recognize that there's so much more ahead, and it's just the beginning of the journey. So just wanted to say that we don't intend to just say goodbye, this is the end, we're wrapping up, and we're certainly still going to be here, this initiative. This is not like an initiative that has an end date to it. So yeah, we do hope that we can continue to work together after. So any other questions? Jorge, maybe I'll ask you about to share a bit about what we were thinking with the blogs and potentially like the short videos, and maybe speak about the big event we're planning for next November and how we might work on some elements in the lead up to that.
Sure. So yeah, thanks, Vera. So we're hoping to work with communities throughout the cohort process on also developing stories that help us capture the insights and your own learning journey. And we're hoping that these stories, and we could even work on the studies. This is also something to be defined. There's a difference internally at Tamarack between blogs and case studies. So the idea is we're hoping to collect these different stories so that we can prepare for the annual event that would be taking place after these 10 months, and in which we would be showcasing the work of these communities, the insights, the highlights from those learnings, and what worked, what didn't work, what were some surprises, and the outcomes of the work that you will be doing. So that's what we're hoping to share at the end of that journey.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, a key piece of our work at Tamarack is profiling success stories and community stories from that are really happening on the ground, and help amplify and share those across the country. So as Jorge mentioned, this would be we're hosting an event, sort of a big event for community climate transitions in next November, which will be our first big gathering. We just launched in June of this year, so we're still new. But we really hope that through this cohort, we'll be able to have a lot of exciting work happening on the ground that we can showcase, and whether it's having participating communities speak on panels, and maybe produce little short videos about some of the experience, so we can showcase those at the event. Throughout the process, like Jorge mentioned, it could be neat to work on, whether we're drafting or you are, a blog about your story, or we might go deeper by writing a case study. So this is part of the work. It's like profiling the work you're doing and sharing that out, and really capturing the good and best practices and the learnings that you're having along the way. So Ida, I see you have a question. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this session, and the cohort sounds really interesting. I was wondering if you could provide just like a bit more detail on some of the more like tangible or specific deliverables that we might be working towards. So I think I have like a very general understanding of what this program will look like, but it would be great to have a sense of, just like what some of the ideal outcomes would be for the participants. Yeah, so I think just like any bit of detail that you could add, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, concrete deliverables and outcomes, I think they would vary by participant a bit, because I think at the beginning, it'll be really important for each participant to outline what goals they want to achieve and what they hope to achieve like within that time frame too, right? So if one community is like, we really want to design and deliver an effective community engagement process, I don't know, establish a collaborative governance structure, like, or work through some initial stages to develop kind of that collective governance piece, and maybe like a formal backbone structure like Halton Environmental Network and its partners in the Halton region have done. Then there's certain deliverables along the way, right? So developing community engagement plan and designing and delivering that might be one. Or maybe a key piece is if it's around collaborative governance, it might be like forming those relationships and strengthening those relationships, and having some initial meetings to talk that through, right? And so that's kind of work that's happening in your community, and you're receiving support along the way from the through this cohort program. But like concrete deliverables from the program, yeah, again, it depends. Like it might be like there's those homework assignments, like developing an engagement planning canvas and so on. So those would be some concrete things that you'll have at the end. Like we'll have a workbook that has kind of some key resources for each of the sessions, and then an assignment. And so you'll at the end have a workbook full of these assignments that you've kind of done. So I guess that would be a key deliverable too. Is that clear?
Yeah, I think that helps. I think I'm just trying, with things like this, often it's hard to like wrap your mind around whether the timeline will work for your specific project and things like that. And yeah, I think that was helpful for sure. Thank you.
Okay, great. I see a couple more questions in the chat. So most transitions require funding. How available do you think this will be for transition mitigations adaptation? Yeah, great question. For sure, there's communities are going to require funding to actually do the work, right? And when we look at our other networks, like Communities Ending Poverty Network, and how they've supported communities across the country, like we've supported them in the process of designing and delivering a collective impact, doing collective impact work on the ground, and have played some role in supporting with connecting to funding opportunities as well. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of funding available right now for this kind of work from different places. So I hope we can support by kind of always doing a scan, and we have a lot of different partners out there who we're working with, who are working in the climate transition space, specifically like at the local level. And so I think connecting participating communities with those funding opportunities is a role that we hope to play, and sharing some of the resources that are out there and available. So that's sort of what we can offer. Jorge, do you want to add anything to that?
That's an excellent question, and part of the reason why we're also looking at the storytelling piece of our work is because we're hoping that through these stories we're able to build the momentum that we need as a community to help us have the okay, this is a know-how, this is the skills for the community, so that you can it can be easier for you to reach out to partners, and I'm specifically thinking about funding partners. I mean, we all know that funding partners, they usually they need proof tangible of what have you done as and in terms of advancing a specific issue. So and this is why we're hoping that the publications that you would be developing and the learning journey that you will be involved in are going to help you build your own portfolio and your own set of assets so that you can also engage with others. And another thing that this is something that emerges when humans come together, because we've been doing this with the other networks at Vibrant Communities, is that we're trying to build also our own community here. And the Climate Transitions Cohort is also a community of practice for the participants to learn from one another, share resources, share expertise, and also see how we can support each other. So yeah, this is how we're looking at it right now. And I'm conscious that we might not be specifically giving you concrete answers, but this is the first iteration of the cohort. So a bunch of the learnings are really emergent at this stage. But we're really hoping that this pathway that we've designed will help you, will facilitate the way you connect with funders and other partners.
I'm seeing one more question in the chat. Just when will we hear back if we're part of the cohort? So yeah, I mean, it depends a bit how many applications come in at the last minute, but we are kind of assessing them on a rolling basis and have asked for them by December 13th. So I'm hoping we can assess before the end of the year and hopefully get back to you by then, but certainly, if not certainly early January, you'll be hearing from us. So well in advance of the first meeting of the cohort, which will be February 8th. But I hope by the end of the year we can do that. And just seeing one more question here. Will most sessions be held around this time? Just thinking of people who are 9 to 5 shape. Yeah. The monthly sessions themselves, we've slotted them, I think this time, 1 to 2:30 Eastern, 90-minute sessions. Is that right, Jorge? I think that's the time. That's the time that seems to work best across time zones in Canada. So, and yeah, during the workday. So I hope that works. But if there's any issues with scheduling, like, do let us know. And if that's a challenge in terms of participating, and we can just see if there's anything we can do. So I think we got through all the questions in the chat, and we're just about at 2 o'clock Eastern. So I just wanted to thank everyone for joining. Jorge, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't remember if we shared our email addresses. Should I add them now?
Oh, right, because we had the last slides of the deck that I think we didn't go back to. Yeah, of course.
Okay, so here's Laura's email address, and here's mine.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Halton, we had the last slide on the upcoming webinar with Halton Climate Collective, but I think you put that in the chat box, right? The link to find more. Okay.
Yeah, I hope you can join us on December 15th. It's a great example of communities coming together and building collaborative leadership skills. So yeah.
Once again, there's the link. So thank you all for joining today, and please do reach out if you have any other questions.